Hey everyone, Meteorologist Tuttle here with you. We've had those storms keeping an eye on over southern and central Oklahoma, and looks like at least one of those has tried to become tornadic in the last about 5 or 10 minutes. So we're going to take a look at that one. We're going to track the rest of these here for a little while the threat for any tornadic activity continues. So thanks for joining me. Make sure you like and share this video. Tell your friends and family about AT's weather. They can get the tornado coverage here live without all of the hype and drama. We'll just give you all the science behind it. We'll show you what's going to happen with the particular threatening elements and whether or not, again, it's going to be over populated areas or whether it's just going to be over grassy areas or open fields or trees, all that kind of stuff. We kind of take a look at that so that we know if there's something to be really concerned about. So that's kind of how we approach it here. That way you can keep a little sanity. Sometimes we do have these warnings out there. Let's see here. Just want to check a couple of things before we get started. Let's see here. Bear with me for a minute. So I had to do some updates here on the computer side. And as usual, not always in the best time. Usually what happens, all right. So yeah, that's okay. All right, so let's get that one done, and we'll do this one here. 7. Okay. All right, so I think we're good to go there. All right, I'm also going to post the link here on the Facebook. If you guys are having trouble when I do go live, you want to get notified the next time I do break-ins that may be going off and on throughout the evening. Make sure that you do get updated. Make sure you click that link, and that way you won't miss it in case Facebook is late to notify you what's happening out there across the area. Now, here on the north side of town, it's not all that bad. We've got clear skies here in my area, 42 degrees. So a really big difference between what's happening here on the north side of Oklahoma City versus what's going down on the south side. So that is obviously a big deal, and that's why we're going to be covering the weather here for the remainder of probably off and on this evening, just to see how things are going to transpire. And it could be up until midnight. There is a threat for tornadic activity in southeastern Oklahoma. So you guys on YouTube, again, thanks for tuning in. Twitter, Rumble, and Facebook. So we'll be doing this off and on throughout the evening. Okay, so let's take a look here at the big picture. All right, so first things first, these are dew point values across the state that I've got on here. And you need dew point values really pretty much close to 60 for really good tornado threat. It can happen when it's in the 50s, but they prefer storms for that type of an environment to really get closer to that 60 dew point. So that's kind of a critical number. Let's zoom in here to the radar view. Storms have, of course, moved all out and away from the Oklahoma City metro area. So they also extend from around the Tulsa region back down. A lot of lightning associated with this, some very heavy rainfall, some small hail from time to time. And then those storms get a little bigger, a little bit more punch to them with some hail threat as you head down from Maud to Kanawha to Bing and Ada to west of you guys. Here's a pretty nasty supercell. Looks like might be developing the hook echoes. Probability of tornadoes at 68%. So that is only increased. But that's not even the one that has a tornado warning on it. It's this one down here moving through Davis. And this one has had a storm spot of at least a lowering indicated with a lot of light. They're having to go off of lightning flashes, right? Because, of course, it is dark. So the Weather Service, because of the velocity characteristics, issued a tornado warning for that one. And then we'll also have other storms down here around Ringling. And there's some out here in southwestern Oklahoma around Waurika, Comanche, but those are not severe at this point in time. So that's the latest look of it. So basically the cluster of storms is right here over south central Oklahoma, right along the I-35 corridor, moving to the east. And so what we're going to do is interrogate each one of these, kind of give you the hazards associated with that, look at the velocity data, and that kind of deal. So let's start here, first off, with this new one coming in, the Pontotoc County in the Ada area. I want to see what the velocity data looks like, and let's see. So, yeah, we'll have to watch this one. So the Weather Service will probably issue a tornado warning on this one here pretty soon. So in the meantime, let's jump down to the active warning down here for the Davis region. Look at the winds here. And so they've really fallen apart over the last, I guess, 5-10 minutes. They were there briefly for just a couple of minutes there. I thought, oh, that's probably going to produce a tornado. Here it is. I'll back it up for you. It's going to put it right here. Just finishing dinner with the wife and opened up my radar app and was like, oh, see this little area right in here? I said, that's not good. So that data right there was quick. It's along the leading edge of the gust front. So it's kind of more of like a QLCS type tornado within this, not typical within the mesoscale. So in other words, it'd be a weaker tornado. But for about 2 or 3 volume scans, it was there present, and then it started to lift and dissipate. And that was last indication of that was probably about 10 minutes ago, and it fell apart. Now there could be some new ones that develop, but that is where that old circulation went. So for the immediate threat of that particular tornado, it has since vanished. We'll see if a new one develops, and the tornado warning will stay in effect, just because sometimes you get some new ones develop when that does happen. So let me read off the warning information within this, and we'll get you up to speed on the track and all that kind of stuff. The Sulphur and Hickory are the two towns between 837 and 849, where this particular leftover, we'll call it, tornadic circulation will be moving on through. So this particular storm could produce another one, even though it has a lull right now. It officially expires until, let's see, about 8:45. Also got some hail with it, so hail size is up around 1.5 inches in diameter. Moving to the east at about 36 miles per hour. So here's some of the communities involved, not from just the tornado track itself, but also just the storm itself. So we're talking Sulphur, Davis, Ruff, Dotery, Hickory, Scullin, Lake of the Arbuckles, and Turner Falls. So we'll watch that. It's got a nice supercell characteristic with it, which means it will cycle off and on, and at times may try to produce a tornado. All right, and that's going to get into an environment that's a little bit more favorable, especially as we head into the 9 and 10 o'clock hour, as a bit better moisture works into far southern and southeastern Oklahoma. Now, the one north of that, let's take a look at this. This one will be heading up toward Ada and Bing. Let's see, Bing about 8:49. Francis coming in at 8:56, and Saskatchewan over here at 9:10. So that's the track of this developing storm, which has a pretty nice little hook on it. And we'll see what it has under its wings. Right now, the severe thunderstorm warning for it goes until 9 o'clock, moving northeast at about 29 miles per hour. Again, possible tornado within this, and 1.5 inch size hail. So basically, golf ball size hail can be expected within this one. And I'll be switching over to different products within this so that I can take a good look. And so I'll be flipping through a lot of different things on the fly so that I can get a good look at what's inside each of these storms. Let's see here. The probability of a tornado. Let's do this. Some of these things I will be updating on the fly. Let's see here. Okay. And a lot of times if I stop talking, it's okay. It's very hard to talk and think all at the same time. There's a lot going on. Let's see. And I got to do it all on the fly, so sometimes it get a little crazy. All right, here's what I was trying to do, is update this graphic for you. The probability of a tornado on this one is at 46%. So we've used these indices off and on for the last couple of years, and the take-home has been kind of interesting on how well they work. Sometimes they do a pretty good job, other times not so much. And so what I've noticed is, and they did issue a tornado warning for this one here to the north, like I talked about. Let's see, so the probability of a tornado is at 58% with this one. What I've noticed is it's more of a ramp up or ramp down versus the actual hardcore number. In other words, say these are both in the mid-50s. If they go from mid-50s to 60s to 70s to 80s, that is when you're indicative of a tornado either developing or ongoing. Then when they back down the opposite direction, again, a weakening cycle or non-existent. Because I've seen tornadoes happen when it's in the 40s. But I've also not seen tornadoes happen when it's in the 80s. And I'm going, So it's me even trying to learn a good way on how to best interpret this research data. Because it's still experimental, but it's good guidance, as far as what to look for. Okay, so here's a look at the latest on this warning. Updated from a severe thunderstorm warning to a tornado warning until 9:15. Moving to the east at 36 miles per hour. Some of the paths, Ada, Bing, Allen, Francis, Saskatchewan, Gertie, and Vanasse. So movement on this one, there's your time of arrival. There's Ada 8:37, Allen 9:06, Gertrude about 9:16. So all that's the next 45 minutes. So this particular tornado, again, probability of one is now increased out of the 50s into the 60s, so 63%. And the one down south from here, still hanging on to the mid-50s. And I'll be going back and forth to different radar programs as well. The one down south, I still can't find a really good circulation for this, so that's good. You guys can breathe a sigh of relief down here. But as always, and I can't stress this enough, you've got to take a tornado warning seriously. So never disregard a tornado warning. You always want to be in your shelters for this one. So this southern one here, let's see, moving east at 35 miles per hour, radar indicated. It does mention mile markers between 47 and 58 on I-35. Again, this southern one is for Sulphur, Davis, Ruff, Daugherty, Hickory, Scullin, Lake of the Arbuckles, and Turner Falls. But as we mentioned here, the last, probably 10 minutes, the circulation center is really weakened. Probability of a tornado here still about 58%. So it's holding steady. In other words, I don't think that'll go up until the organization gets a little bit better. Meanwhile, the one up here coming in, looks like the town of Ada, which you guys need to be in your shelters for, that probability has gone up to 67%. Now, the location within the circulation feature is right around County Road 3500 that runs due south off of Highway 19. Best cross intersection I have for you is East Road 157. So 157 is the east and west road, and now moving up to County Road 351 that runs kind of north and south. It does stop because, let's do this. I want you to see something here. It's kind of going over a little bit of a river bottom and open land. So good news. No major communities involved currently in the path of this particular circulation center. But as you can see with time, it will move through the town of Ada. So let's see if it does increase in intensity, if it holds its own, or if it diminishes. Any of those are on the table, and we'll watch it here carefully. But in the meantime, you want to be in your shelters if you live in the town of Ada. All right, so those are the only two storms that have had any rotation with them to be of concern. If you're watching down across, southern Oklahoma, you're like, what about all these guys, Aaron? Right now, they're just hail and some heavy rain, a little bit of lightning from Velma down toward Waurika, Ryan, and then back east from there toward, looks like Helton, Fox, between there and Springer. This is all northwest of Ardmore. So again, the heavier stuff is kind of that sweet spot, south central Oklahoma from Pauls Valley to about Davis, and then points east for right now. Now with time, let me do this here. Get my drawing tool on here for you. All right, so with time this evening, we're looking at kind of a favored area from around McAllister, kind of in this zone over the next couple of hours. So as these storms kind of move into this environment, eventually over time, again, with more moisture coming in from the south, these dew point values getting in here into the 60s instead of the 50s, as long as that happens with the high resolution model data, which indicated that earlier today, then these would have a potential to hang on. Because once they become supercellular, they become more rooted in what we call the boundary layer, which means they're down near the surface, they're not elevated. If they're down near the surface, and they can tap into this surface-based instability and this shear that is present in that environment, then they can produce a tornado. So that does mean overnight and evening tornadoes from really southeastern Oklahoma through southwestern southern Arkansas. And then if there's some new development down south, which the earlier data had indicated down just about to Dallas, then that activity also needs to be watched in the north and northeastern Texas. But there's a situation there. Okay, so let me see here. Let me go back to this guy, and I'm going to put on a couple of different graphics that I want to see. Let's see here. Okay, that is of no help. I had a product on here that's misbehaving, and so until it stops misbehaving, I won't be able to use it. Anyway, it's just going to be overlaying the cape and instability in the environment that these storms are moving into. But the numbers that you see here on the screen are the dew point values. So there's a dew point value of 57, just around the Ardmore area. Down south toward Dallas, dew point values at 61. So these 60s are working their way to the north. It's just taking their time to do so. But the winds are very light right now, so it's not a big advection. Advection means transport, movement from one place to another. And right now the winds are fairly light in that area, so it's not advecting that richer moisture too far to the north just yet. But I think with time here in the evening, that'll change over the next couple of hours. Okay, so let's go back to, again, up here in Tulsa. Your threat only is for some small hail at most. Otherwise, some lightning and some brief heavy rain. That continues down south. You guys are in the clear in Shawnee. Seminole, you're still getting the heavy thunderstorm there. But again, no issue with that other than maybe some small hail. And then once you get south of there, Kanawha, and west of Allen and Bing and Ada, that's where that particular storm resides. Then from there down toward Roth in the 935 corridor. All right, so the only storm right now we'll focus on that has any potential activity for tornadic development is this one coming into Ada. So if you're new or if you've, kind of new to Oklahoma or at least new to my channel, just look at the bottom of the screen on the crawl at the bottom, and it tells you exactly what to do when you do have a tornado warning. It's always the lowest floor, away from all outside walls and windows, and put as many things you can do around you to protect you from flying debris. So a lot of people do a mattress and a bathtub if that's the centermost part of your home. Some people do a stairwell. If you have a basement, obviously there's still a few of you guys out there that have basements. And of course, a storm shelter, you've got that. Probably the tornado is still up around 67% within this particular storm. This is the time of arrival. So again, Ada here, just a couple more minutes. And then we've got Allen and we've got Gertie. Let's analyze the rotation data within this. And let's see here. So the good news is, let's go back. The tighter circulation on the leading end has kind of diminished and then rotated back around to the northwest side, which typically happens. I'll draw it for you. So this is the outflow area of the storm that comes in. It's a rear flank downdraft. What happens a lot of times, you get these circulation centers that bubble up kind of in this area, and then they rotate northward, and then they kind of eventually wrap back around inside the circulation. So think of it just kind of going like this and then like this. And they can rotate along the way, and then once they get wrapped into here, we'll do two things. One, either they'll die, or two, they'll last a little bit longer and they'll produce a little bit of a tornado. So that's kind of how this goes. And right now it's wrapped up here in this little spot. We have very weak velocity data. So that's a good news. I like to see the weak data versus seeing strong data. So that could indicate then that we've got a little bit better deal for us here. Let me look at what I want to do here. Oh, let's do this. I know what I wanted to do. Flip the velocity data over. It's obviously going to be probably a little windy in Ada when this storm does come through because you're on the rear flank downdraft of it. So it's like the little hook echo part of the storm. The biggest hail and whatnot is going to be up here between Bing and just north of Center, so north of the town of Ada. So believe it or not, you guys don't have to worry so much about the hail, although sometimes there's a little bit of hail in the hook. But the biggest hail is going to be up just to your north, whereas you have to worry about potential tornadoes. So just stay in your shelters there in Ada until this storm moves through. So Weather Service, just reading what they had to say, is they were talking about how this one down here, the velocity data has kind of lost its structure a long time ago. Then they're still watching it because it still could happen, but right now it's not. But I've told you that before. So you stay in your shelters anyway until the storm passes you by. But you can at least breathe a sigh of relief that there's nothing currently happening as far as tornadic activity goes. But that can change between now and 5 minutes from now because it does have a environment favorable. Back up here to the north, though, for this Ada one, let's see. New parameters came in. Probability of a tornado is still holding at 66%. So it hasn't ramped up anymore. It got into the 60s and it kind of held. And to deal with this one, all right, so new update came in. The leftover circulation center is still over this little river bottom up here, which is north and west of Ada. So we're talking about probably a mile and a half outside of town to the northwest. So right now that would pass over Egypt Road coming up. And one of the side highways that come in north out of town, the west side. Let me load up my highway markers here. Let's see. So there's 377 on the west side, and so that'll be passing over 377 here in a few minutes. And there's Egypt Road. So again, that's northwest of Ada, by about a mile and a half outside of town. So that good news is that would mean it would miss the bulk of Eta anyway. So a couple of good things we have here. One is it's going to be passing the north side of the heavy, densely populated area. But number two is that the velocity couplet has really weakened and become a little bit more disorganized. So best of both worlds. Let's see here. Fire department did see a wall cloud within this, but nothing on the ground. So again, good news all around, which confirms with the velocity data. So you guys in Eta can breathe a lot easier, but stay in your shelters until this thing passes on by. Southwest from there, again, a quick look at this one. Same idea, not really doing much. You guys, that what could be a potential circulation center for like a wall cloud is right along State Highway 7, east out of Sulphur, across Fletcher Road, that intersection, coming up on Highway 1 here in a couple minutes. So that's the location of that one. And then again for Eta, you guys, you're going to get some wind a little bit with the storm that's moving through. But the residual circulation, northwest side of town on the highway, and what is that, Egypt Road? All right, so let me think here. Everything else is good there. So if you do have friends and family that do live in this part of Oklahoma, just let them know. Say tag them in the comments, or you can do a share and DM it to them. Send it to them in their DMs, or hey, you can go old school and you can just text them from your phone. Say, yo, check out AT's covering your area for tornadoes. And I'll stay on here as long as there's a tornado warning and then a potential threat. And like I said earlier, I may have to go off for a while and then come back on if things kind of quiet down and then give it some time before they try to ramp back up again. Okay, so here again is the latest. I'll tell you what I wanted to do. Let's take a look at the hail, since right now things are kind of quiet in the tornado department. Let's just see what this storm looks like aloft. Okay. All right, so we've got hail cores up around 30,000 feet, and they're in that purple shading. And usually the purple shading is indicative of golf ball size hail. So there you go. So there's Eta, if I flatten it down for you. Okay, so we're looking north of Eta, that little line. If you look up here, you do see some hail cores up here in this purple shading. And that does mean golf ball size hail being lofted. And then, of course, some of that does make its way to the ground, and then others kind of just get carried as the storm moves east from there. So I don't see algorithms right now at the most 1.94 inches in diameter from the radar estimate on the hail size. Let me see what the other products we have here. There's a little patch here in this gray area. Oh, just moved on me. So it's right about here for the ZDR. And that is cross-correlated with the low coefficient, which is in the 0.7. And then we shall go KDP. It's wet. Okay, so we have basically a lot of melting hail within this little batch right here, but also some large hailstones mixed in. So about 2 inches in diameter is usually when you start to get these values in the gray and blue. That's usually what that means when everything's co-located. Now that particular area is over, you guessed it, brushland, little river. There are a couple of houses here on the east side, farmhouses of that little core. There's a couple here to the north. So these little farmhouses might get a little bunch of that hail in that little spot. But otherwise, it's over that part of the countryside. Okay, so Eta, you got the storm moving through. You've had a report of 1 inch. Looks like, 1 inch size hail. So that's just barely severe thunderstorm criteria-wise. So that's better than getting 2 inch size hail. Let's see here. The structure of the storm, remember it had kind of a hook echo structure with it, which, kind of looked like this, and then it had a nice structure like that. Well, it's gone, right? So now we just have this linear structure like this, like a L, but upside down L. That doesn't do it. That's not going to produce a tornado. So you can, again, breathe sigh of relief. The way that's structured out, temporarily, you're getting a little bit of a break. It has to kind of reform. So if you're in the Eta area, you're fine. It's like You have to be northeast of Eta now to even get a chance of having something happen. The old circulation potential, you're probably going to see a wall cloud, has moved. Let's see, that's North County Club Road and Tower Road is the intersection of the wall cloud. Probability of a tornado has dropped to 57%. So the algorithms I use have now dropped in the lower category, which typically mean weakening. Let me see what else I got here for you. Yeah, that's it. Okay. All right. So right now, this is kind of becoming a cluster of nonsense. The structure that it had once before, not nearly as good as it was, and by that meaning not as conducive for tornadic activity. Here's the algorithm did punch in a 2-inch size hailstone in that area I talked about. So the algorithms have picked up a little bit on the hail. So that would be probably our biggest hailstorm right now. The one down here near Hickory is really weakened. And interesting enough, the probability of a tornado went up to 82%. So it took on a completely different characteristic, has weakened, and yet the algorithm got fooled into thinking that it's better than it was. Interesting. Also to note that there is no tornado warning with this. It's been allowed to expire just because there hasn't been one in, well, at least the last 20 minutes plus. So it'll stay a severe thunderstorm warning until conditions change again. So using this algorithm, still it irritates me because it's kind of a grain of salt, right? It's a good idea, and it uses a lot of indices, which normally would indicate tornadic development, and it has a high number, 82%. I mean, that would get my attention. And it did change from the 50s, and it ramped up to the 80s, so that would get my attention to go and investigate it. But as the velocity data shows, we don't have a good tight couplet at all. So something triggered on that algorithm that needs to be tweaked in the research community to give a false positive. All right. So really the strongest storm that we have is this current one here, moving through Ada with the hail on the north side of Bing and Francis. Let's go do something up here. So let's see, hailstorm, East Road 1470 and New Bethel Boulevard and Main Street and Robin Road. This is all just on the east side here of 377. Then you can go west of there, 1470, up around North Road 354 and 3530 and 1460. So that's where your biggest hailstones will be within this guy. All right, let's do another. Let's see, what is this one doing? Oh, it automatically tracked a deal here for me. So 2-inch size diameter hail, storm speed at 32 miles per hour to the northeast. And still some mid-level weak rotation. Let's see, anything else? We can, it's not going to work. Let's go with this one. Okay, so this particular path here, this is what was left of the old Hook Echo, Allen 906, Gertie 915, Calvin 924, and Stewart 935. And this will expire at 9:15 if they don't cancel it, because that's going to be another 30 minutes of this thing under tornado warning, which has no signs of producing one, so they may cancel it because it's a long ways to sit there and watch it go. We'll see. It's up to the radar operator at the Weather Service how they want to go with that. They can go either way, just to let you know. Still got some hail though. Max hail size 1.5, but as we saw in the data, there's going to be some 2-inch size stones in there. Still has Ada, Bing, Allen, Francis, Saskatchewan, and Gertie. All right. Now, again, if you're late, you're tuning in. Where are we? We are not in Oklahoma City. We're kind of focused here in south central Oklahoma. And if we do take a little round-robin tour up here in the Tulsa area, you guys, yes, you're getting some thunderstorm activity, but it is not severe. It's good old-fashioned rain, though, and you've got some lightning with it. You might get some small hail. Your hail probabilities pick up, though, once you get south of 40, albeit small at first until you can get a really hefty storm. And that won't happen until you get to the one down here near Kanawha and south of Holdenville. and then through Ada and Roth. Those two storms still have some pretty good hail with them. And then back southwest from there, these eyes are just garden variety thunderstorms. This one is severe only because it's got probably a little bit of hail and wind with it. These guys out here are not severe, just lightning and rain. And then having trouble back building any further south than there, it looks like. Let's see. Let's do a couple of these products. Okay. What is going on with this thing? So some of these will be able to produce at least a little bit of wind. This has wind potential up around 60 miles per hour. And that's standard for a severe thunderstorm, just so you know. Otherwise, it looks like a lot of 50s in there. This one here has got better potential. There's 65 mile per hour wind potential in some of the gusts from the cores that come down. So that's some damaging wind that can do a little bit of damage to trees, small trees and fences, that kind of deal. What I was wanting to show on here was the hail size estimates, but this graphic is being goofy. Let me see if I can do it a different way. Hail, let's do this one, see if this works. All right, so this is just the probability of hail. So it just shows you where some of the heavier hail is. What I wanted to do was the hail size. Now I don't think these tools are working for some reason. Something's going on in the radar data world. Let's go hail tracks. At least give me that. Well, that part at least worked. Hail track here northwest of town. Let's see. So there's a little hail track here between Hickory and Sulphur. There's one out here on Davis along 7. There was one down here, southwest Oklahoma, Ringling and Wilson. A little bit of a hail track there. So some of these, yeah, they got a little bit of hail with them historically. All right, they're going to cancel this severe thunderstorm warning down south because it dropped off, wasn't doing anything. So let's go back to my reflectivity. All right, so that was this guy down here that we looked at a minute ago, and it's fallen below severe limits, so it has been canceled. All right, so just two severe storms. This one here for Roth, it's going to have a little bit of hail with that one. Track on it, Hickory, well, it's come and gone, so this is on the back end. Stonewall coming up, Tupelo and Central Homa till now at about 9:24. And that's not for anything tornadic, it's just for a strong thunderstorm with a little bit of hail in it. And then whereas this one here is our biggest storm. Allen at 9:06, Gertie 9:15, Calvin 9:24, Stewart at 9:35. This one's moving to the east at 36 miles per hour. And just updated there. Dropped off a couple of town names, so now it's just Allen, Francis, and Saskatchewan. All right. Hail probability is still at least 1.5 inches in diameter, so you're still looking up close to golf ball size. Anytime you see the purple on the map, it usually means you have hail size up to around golf balls. Let's see here, and that's about it. Let me see if the winds are doing anything. So a little area we talked about here on the east side is where we'd watch for anything new to develop and then rotate back in. I'm going to switch radar views and go to this guy. So there is a little weak generalized circulation. It's not a tight couplet, but that would be your area of interest. And this is southeast of Francis by a couple of miles. Going over this little river bottom again. A lot of rivers in Oklahoma. A lot of land. And a lot of trees. So right now it's centered over this little region here, which is a lot of trees and a little pond. It has gotten a little tighter though in the last, let's see. Let me see how this looks. Has it changed much? It's consistent. Probability of a tornado is still at 58%. Let's see, a new one of these came in and now says 60%. It's kind of holding its own. Let me see what else I got on here. So this would be what we call the rotation tracker. The yellow is where you'd be more focused on, and so it does have that here. Now if I go in time, the best way to use this product is that it increase. Let's take a look. Let me go back in time. So it looks like it's been pretty steady. Okay, so what the highest was way back here southwest of Ada when that first tornado warning was issued. You had some red in there, right? So what's the trend? The trend was the red went away, yellow kind of hung in there with the green. Yellow got a little stronger, but that's it. So in other words, it's kind of holding its own, which means it's got a really strong, good mesocyclone and good structure. It just hasn't produced a tornado here recently. But this last little scan here, tightening up, is getting close to that point. It's not imminent, but it's getting close. But so what happens is, so the Weather Service looks like they upgraded this, updated the polygon on this. So the warning came out with a little updated wording. Let's see. So capable of producing a tornado is 4 miles southeast of Francis, moving east at 35. Radar indicated rotation. Let's see what else we got. Allen, Francis, and Sasqua. Anything else? Max hail size up to 1.5 inches currently, and everything's radar indicated. So for the Weather Service, whenever they give these little warnings, they always put in there what you can do. In this particular case, they say take cover, move to a storm shelter, safe room, or an interior room on the lowest floor of a sturdy building. Avoid windows. If you're outdoors in a mobile home or in a vehicle, move to the closest substantial shelter and protect yourself from flying debris. Tornadoes are extremely difficult to see and to confirm at night. Do not wait to see or hear the tornado. Take cover immediately. So they put that wording in every official tornado warning. All right, this guy down here, nice little blob. And that's all it is, the blob. This guy here, let me update the wind. Okay, so one of the reasons why this guy might be having a hard time producing a tornado is the environment it's going into. In other words, the dew point values, right? So if we come over here to a center west of McAllister and here near Stewart, there's a sensor here with a temperature of 66 degrees, so that's pretty cool, with a dew point of 57. So there's not a whole lot of instability surface space to work with, which means the storm has to use mid-level instability to hold itself together. And so that's a weakness in the development of a tornado. Doesn't mean it can't happen, it's a weakness that kind of holds it at bay. It could still eventually go do that. As a matter of fact, the latest scan, let's see. Let's go last scan here. So we've gotten a little tighter in our area. So what we're watching for, by the way, is this little region here. It's where these blue colors and these red colors meet. And sometimes there'll be a marker with a little triangle on here. The triangle is a threshold value for a vortex. But that's what we'd watch for to see this kind of get stronger in the wind speeds and then kind of closer together and tighter in coverage. And then that's how you know you're going to get a developing tornado. Like in this particular case, it kind of opened back up. So in other words, let's do this for you. Okay, so we had some pretty good pixel to pixel convergence in this small area. All right, now we went to the next scan. We had a more broader pixel to pixel, and all we had was just these two interlocking, and that's pretty weak. That's pretty lame. So nothing's really going to happen with that. The other one was a little bit more impressive, but it already fell apart. So it's struggling to maintain its lowest level circulation. If I go aloft, let me see if I see anything better. No. So down at the surface level, and this is where are we at? 3,000 feet, 3,800 feet. So we are in the range of the radar for the height of the beam to be able to see a tornado develop in that area. So Weather Service, so funny. So as I described to you what's happening, I'm reading what they're talking about. And they just said that the storm east of Francis has wrapped up significantly in the last 0.5 degree elevation scan with 40 knots of rotational velocity. So there you go. So just to let you know, I look at the same thing they do, and I walk you through it, just like I'm the forecaster on the lead desk. They've got different stations there. So you'll have, on that shift work, you'll have a guy just monitoring the forecast only. Then you'll have usually one minimum, but sometimes two guys then handling the severe weather warnings, because they'll split areas, right? So one guy may cover, one section of the state, another guy covers another, because it's a lot of storm activity to look at and focus on. If you're having to do the whole state by yourself, which is what I do, right? So it's exhausting. So you get worn out, and they want to make sure they're fresh and they don't miss anything, because that's their job. Let's see. So they're going to keep the tornado warning going because of a couple of things we talked about, which is rotational shear, which is that yellow area I showed you here, and also the fact you still have a broad couplet, which kind of gets a little tighter at times and then gets back to the broad, which means it's still trying. It's just it can't do it yet. And I think the limiting factor is the instability. For the dew point values are just too low. It's running into an atmosphere that's just a little too cool, which means a little too unstable. And if things are a little bit different, you bet we got a completely different outcome, but that's not the case. And that was forecasted well by the model data. This far north, you're in a cool environment, so it's going to be very difficult to do so. So let me see what we have here on big picture for dew point values. So they're still into the 60s along the Red River, down to Dallas. These guys are still into the 50s. I'm going to animate this, and let's see if those numbers have changed any. All right. Well, in theory, I was. Is it doing anything? Oh, there it goes. No, these guys changed down here a little bit in North Texas, but they're holding steady here. So we haven't had any really good moisture advection then in the last hour. So that means these guys here, just all they have to work with is what we have, and that's ankle deep moisture. So a very strong limiting factor. All right, so the circulation center of this will be over Allen here in about 5 minutes, and Calvin coming around 9:23. Luckily, again, is a broad circulation center within this, so it's not a very tightly wound tornadic activity at all. The warning goes until 9:15, movement to the northeast at 36, hail size up to also an inch in diameter for this particular tornado warning. Other storms continue to develop down here in southern and southwestern Oklahoma, but no big deal for those. Good old-fashioned standard stuff, lightning and rain. And then back up here to the north and east, same thing through Tulsa, lightning and rain. Because your dew point's up here in the 30s, so you don't have anything to worry about severe weather with that deal. Down here, you're wondering, well, why do they have an issue down here? And I can answer that if I could see. Can I see? Hold on, I'll show you. In theory. Nah, it's too small in here because the winds are so weak. I can't even see the colors on here. Oh, it's terrible. Let me look. All right. So we have a warm front, which is kind of roughly in this fashion here. Probably snakes up to this region, kind of in this zone. So that's a loose interpretation because I can't even see the arrows on there. They're so small. And usually if it's a small arrow, it's a very weak wind. So it makes it harder to see on this map. But regardless, this is where you have the leading edge of any instability at all, which is you can see why the storms are kind of riding along it and near it because they need that moisture to survive. But that is a limiting factor of where you get anything that's decent when it comes to low level moisture. Because once you get north of that, it drops quickly with dew point values in the 40s and 30s. And you can't have severe weather with dew point values in the 40s and 30s when we're talking about damaging winds, very large hail, and tornadoes. Can you get some hail with dew points in the 30s? Sure. We got hail 3 weeks ago when we had the sleet, but we also had hail mixed in with it. That was crazy. So that stuff can happen. But as far as what we're talking about tonight, you got to have the better juice, so to speak. Okay, so here's a updated warning polygon that will go till 10 o'clock. So this just issued. Again, moving northeast at 36 for the tornado warning, which includes Allen, Calvin, and Atwood. And the tornado vortex signature is still noted on radar. The path, Allen at 905, Calvin 923. And then last but not least, let's go see what the velocity data looks like. Oh, even less impressive from before, from that viewpoint. Let's go to another view. Yep, so the center of what you probably would see out there as a wall cloud at this point in time is northwest of Allen. And let's see if I even have a single road. It's going to be north of Francis Road by about 2 miles. I just updated, so make that now 3 miles. And west of North County Line Road that runs out of Allen and coming up on the Canadian River. Well, obviously. Let's see what else we got. Oh, that's the county line for Pontotoc. So it's that northeastern Pontotoc County line right along the river is where this would be located. So there's no roads out here. It's just a river bottom. Let's see. So you can see the river here on the map. So literally crossing right over it. And then you can see trees on the other side. Looks like maybe a little farmhouse there. And there were a couple of farmhouses, looks like right over here. And that's about it. So very sparsely populated region. But again, it's a very broad, weak circulation. So it's not in that stage of immediate development. It's going to take a little bit for that to happen, if it happens at all. This guy down here in Fitztown, at this point, man, it's just a good thunderstorm with a little bit of hail on the northeast side of town. And that's about it. And these other guys are nothing to write home about. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hang with this one here for a couple minutes around the Allen area, and we'll see if it eventually does anything. Even this data here looks like it's weakened some. If I go back, there was a lot more bright yellows. And if I go forward in time, just one little panel left. So the trend has been weakened a little bit in the algorithms. All right, so that's becoming linear again, which is kind of the up and down look. So not all that strong. Okay. The warning on this updated one that came out a couple minutes ago. Tornado warning for southern Seminole County and east central Oklahoma, northeastern Pontotoc County and east central Oklahoma, and southern Hughes County and southeastern Oklahoma up until 10 o'clock. Severe storm capable of producing a tornado located 4 miles west of Allen, moving northeast at 35. Tornado and ping pong ball size hail is possible. Locations, Allen, Calvin, and Atwood. Take cover if you live in this area. So that's the wording on the warning. Standard general wording. All right, so still watching this weak couplet. Nothing yet. All right. So what I'm looking at is this little region here. That would be our developing tornado should that happen. And right now it's not looking likely in the next few minutes anyways. But as always, what I do is I walk you through this. Obviously calm, cool, and collected for one. I'm not jumping up and down and screaming, hooting, and hollering. So I tell you like it is for one. Number two is I guide you through the process, what the storm is doing, how, when, and why. We look underneath it to see, is it overpopulated area, is it going to be, or is it over open farmland? Also what we do is I tell you what the storm will be doing before it does it, so you're prepared to know what's going to happen. And then as I see the trends, I'll tell you what the storm is going to do as it ramps up or weakens. And then also I remind you that even though I'm going to look at the data and tell you whether or not there's a radar indicated tornado at that point in time, I'm always going to stress, if you're under a tornado warning, you still seek shelter. Just because I tell you there's not a tornado warning currently, doesn't mean you get to come out of your shelter and go, AT said there's no tornado, so I'm coming out. That's not what I'm here to tell you to do. That would be a foolish thing to do. If you're under a warning, stay there. It's for a reason. It's for your own good. What you can do, though, is when I walk you through this, is breathe a sigh of relief going, phew. There's not one's been reported. I don't think it's been out there as a wall cloud or, scary looking clouds, whatever. And you can use that information to calm your anxiety, calm your fears, and just wait it out until it's done. And tell your family and that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how I approach this. That way there's a lot less PTSD and there's a lot less anxiety and stress over what is already a stressful situation, right? Nobody wants to ride out a tornado. So the more information I can give you, the better calm yourself and think more logically and critically, then the better off you're going to be and your family member's going to be. Because if you're all worked up and going crazy, well, then your kids are going to feed off of that. They're going to go crazy. Your spouse is going to go crazy. So our idea is to limit the amount of crazy when we already are in a crazy environment. So that's what my goal is to do, and I think that's what resonates a lot with people. All right, so let's see here. What's interesting on this environment, I'm very curious. I learn from this every time I use it. This is the probability of a tornado. This is up there at 81%. So it goes to show you that just because you have a high number does not mean you're going to have a tornado. But what I'm learning from this is environments that cause these higher numbers. And I use it to form my own database as to how much weight do I put into this experimental product. They call it experimental product for a reason, right? Because it's not, solid. It's still got some work that needs to be done. So the ramping up of the number was one thing I did notice was typically a trend for tornado genesis. The other is it appears to be, this has a bias toward mid-level instability and mid-level shear and structure. It seems to not weigh low-level instability enough. So it reads too high when it shouldn't. So I'm going to put that in my note. I'm going to see this next time, and I'm going to check out the low-level instability that it has to work with. If it's low like it is now, then I'm going to discount these higher numbers. So that's just on me, so that when I go to present you this information, that I know the best way to utilize it and present it. Whereas I'm not just yelling, oh my gosh, it's an 81%. It's going to happen any moment. That would be an idiotic thing to do that someone who's not educated in this field that would do. All right, let's see. So I'm going to read the Weather Service discussion for a mesoscale update. Most favored area for storms, including potential for a tornado or two, continues to shift into eastern and southeastern Oklahoma. Warm front currently analyzed to extend for a line from Roth to Stonewall to Kiowa, Oklahoma, with the cold front advancing towards I-35. A cluster of storms across Pontotoc and Hughes will continue to pose a tornadic threat into eastern Oklahoma amidst 500 to 1,500 joules of CAPE and 200 to 300 meters per second squared of effective southern or storm relative helicity. sufficient moisture, and I disagree on the sufficient moisture part, but LCLs. Additional storms are slowly organizing along the cold front. Damaging winds, perhaps a tornado, are the main threats. So there you go. That's the latest discussion for the Weather Service on what's to come here later this evening. All right. So now I can be the devil's advocate for that. So you can say sufficient moisture when it comes to severe storms. Checkbox, because that was a all-encompassing paragraph of text. If you want to talk about specific tornado threat, then again, we're a little lacking in that department. That's a good thing. All right, so the wind speeds within this have weakened quite a bit. The circulation center is just about absent. So that thing has really died. See the yellow? See, we'll go here forward in time. It's shrinking, both the green and then the yellow is one last little tick. For you guys in Atwood and Calvin, so you can breathe much easier knowing that this old circulation center is coming toward your direction. But again, stay in your shelters as always, like we discussed. Let me see what else we got going on here. All right, I do see signs of what will eventually probably ramp up a little bit as far as storm structure. So what we're going to look at is this guy right here, this east-west boundary. Okay, so as the storm moves in to this direction, watch what happens to this east-west boundary. So I'm going to move this forward. So that one gets absorbed in here, and it starts to kind of do this S-shaped. And then this one's going to do the same thing. It's going to get absorbed, and it'll start to do more of this S-shaped. So in theory, the storm should become a little bit better defined as more of an S appearance, which then leads to a potential for more of a hook appearance. Now, all this whole process will still take another 10 minutes, more than likely, but that might be the sign of the storm getting a little better organized here in the short term. And then we'll see how the velocity data reacts once that process happens. All right, so that is the only two storm warnings in the state. The tornado threat warning for you guys up around Calvin and Atwood. Allen, it's east of you. And then down south, the severe storm for Stonewall coming into Lula for some hail along with that one. I've got 39 degrees in my backyard on my Davis weather station. Let's see. Let me see something. Yeah, I had to update my temperature in the bottom right. It's 39.2 degrees. All right. I'm going to hang with this just for a few more minutes just to see kind of what happens with this inflow that's coming into the storm, which may indicate better mid-level rotation. And then we'll see if that translates down to the surface. And we'll see if that changes the velocity structure some for more of an imminent threat. And then if not, then what I'll probably do is take a break for a little bit and then kind of watch it and then come back on once that threat reestablishes itself. Because this official warning goes until 10, I believe it is. And so if it doesn't change here pretty soon, they'll have to replace it with a severe thunderstorm warning. All right, other thing I can do, I wait on this. The new data has come in for this evening. So while I'm waiting to see what happens with this guy, I'm going to switch this to two panels. So this is going to be a side-by-side deal. So on side-by-side for weather radar is reflectivity product on the left, velocity product on the right. Reflectivity just means your rain. It's a DBZ power threshold. When the radar beam goes out, It detects whatever's in the atmosphere and it returns that power and it color codes it. So the stronger the return, the brighter the color. What causes big returns? Big raindrops, a lot of raindrops, obviously hail. Those are all big returns. And then when you get to what we call like a debris ball, that's like when a tornado hits something that, like trees, houses, whatever. Those are huge returns, right? So then those, you get like purple on the map from those. So that's kind of how you get the reflectivity product. The velocity product is just a measure of wind within this same spectrum that we're looking at. And it just measures the variance. So the radar beam goes out and it says, okay, we have a variance here of something moving one direction, something moving another. Let's measure the two and plot it out on the screen. And that's how you get these reds and greens. So they split it up where the red is winds going away from the radar, and the green, which can go to blue as the winds pick up in intensity, comes toward the radar. So you look for those reds and greens to come in relation to one another pretty close, and that's why you track your mesocyclones. So let's see here. So we'll give that a second, and let me get this one updated too. Alright, so we're going to go on a little round robin tour. Alright, so we're talking about our watch here. Let me see if they have any mesoscale discussions. Nope. Let's see here. They're talking about severe weather probabilities, of course, down in southeast Oklahoma from the threat today, and the tornado potential also down here in southeast Oklahoma. All right, let's see what else we got. It's not bad here, map to show you. So I kind of showed you where the front was. It's kind of it was a warm front today, but it looks like it's quickly turning into a cold front. So here's the line that runs something like this, like so. So this front is hauling. All right, it is moving fast. It's got its fast pants on. I always kid Jody about that. Sometimes she can move, and I say, "You got your fast pants on?" And but man, yeah, these temperatures are in the 30s. I mean, so this front means business. That's cold air advection just cranking. Now, what'll happen is, with it being that strong, see, look at the winds here on this. The winds up here, by the way. See these G's? That means gust to like 23. So the winds are gusting up around 20 plus miles per hour. Now these winds down here in southeast Oklahoma, there's a few gusts right about at 20, but most of these are gusts to 15. So what happens is you have an imbalance. It's like you're holding up the front, right? You guys are down there in southeast Oklahoma. You're like, oh, let's stop this thing from coming in. And the most you have are wind barbs at 5 to 10 knots. And you're meeting wind barbs that are at 15 to coming up to 20 to 25 knots. You're not going to win that battle. So in other words, the cold front is going to come in and blow you out of the water. So what that means is the faster the front, what happens is it undercuts the storms. So let's see, another way to visualize this. Let's do this way. Okay, so let's see. We've got the ground right here, okay? And I'm going to show you what a cold front looks like. A cold front is an elevated boundary. So right here at the surface, right here we live and breathe, we're at ground zero, right? But up here is, it could be 1,000 feet or whatever. All right, so we'll just say 1,000 feet up here. So the front is on a slope. So the leading edge is shallow, but it gets deeper as you go with time. All right, so now let's say you've got a storm that is all bubbling up right here. And it's trying to do something like produce a tornado or whatever, okay? Hail, that kind of stuff. Well, remember how I told you get a fast-moving storm or a fast-moving front, and it's just hauling cold air, building in this way really fast? So what happens is then it shoves this boundary right underneath the storm. And what happens is the inflow that this storm had, which is nice warm air that was feeding into it, down here at the lowest levels to help it grow, was just cut off. It just got sliced. And this boundary said, nope, I'm going to win out. I just cut you off. Now this guy here dies. It's sometimes a slow death, because there's still some residual elevated moisture that comes in here, but the low level moisture has been cut off, which means no tornadoes, no really huge hail anymore, and now it's just left on its own momentum. So that's what's happening here in southeast Oklahoma with these storms. And if we go back here, let's see here, we'll look at, so this is on Seminole County. Let me go back to my map over here. So this is Seminole County right here. Okay, so it's already undercut that storm that's still trying to produce a tornado. So that's another issue here. It's running out of territory, out of space to do that, because the cold air is catching up to it on the backside. Let's see. Matter of fact, here's a deal here, northwest, at temperature of 52 degrees, dew point at 48, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, about 10 miles from this mesocyclone. And then on the other end of it, you got another one that's about 10 miles away, and it's 66 degrees over dew point of 57. So the front is right in between. And so this storm is pretty much right on that boundary. Now, there is something to say about with the boundary. If it's a slow-moving front and the storm can stay just out ahead of it, sometimes if it's lined up right, you can use a little extra, we call it horizontal vorticity along that front baroclinic lift and motion to get pulled into that updraft and help produce a tornado. But in this case, if the front's moving too fast, it doesn't even have a chance to do that because it just moves on by and undercuts it. So that's another thing that's happening out here for this storm in the Calvin area. But so there you go. Oh, it looks like the Weather Service went ahead and issued a new tornado warning for this guy down south, because this secondary little area here notched up as it's trying to produce a hook echo. So they're going to be ahead of the curve on this one and kind of beat it to its punch in case this decides to try to do something. So it's not a bad play, but it's a little early. So the official update on this one, south of Lula, tornado warning issued for northern Cole County in southeastern Oklahoma, east central Pontotoc County, and southeastern Hughes until 10:15. Severe storm capable of producing a tornado was located 4 miles south of Tupelo, moving northeast at 35. Let's see who we got. Locations, we got Stewart. And that's it, with hail up to around 1.25 inches. All right, let's go to the big pick here, and we'll do a track on this, see if it shows anything. It also shows Ashland, but that's coming up at 10 o'clock. That's 30 minutes away. So that would be the back end here where the rotation center is. All right, and this guy up here, let's see what it's doing. Still got Calvin. Well, it's just past Calvin, so it's got Indianola coming in at 10:13. So now have 2 tornado warnings, but again, this one down south is not quite there yet. The one to the north still isn't there yet. And the one down south, here's the deal, and the way we're looking at the front, the one down south might have a better potential over time. You got to give it some more time than the one up here to the north, because I think the one up here to the north is got that cold front undercutting it, and I think that's going to prevent it from doing that. All right, so let's go back. Let's see, map-wise. Let me see what else I got. Oh, by the way, there's still some snow going on in the Panhandle up into southwestern Kansas. So they got temperatures up here into the teens. Woof! And there's winds up here that are a little breezy, but not bad. What are they? 29 miles per hour for a wind gust. So it's not terrible. So a little bit of blowing snow in that area. And the pink is a winter storm warning, whereas the purple is a winter weather advisory. The difference is one is a nuisance accumulation, and then one is that's significant, like a few inches of snow. And that, of course, extends up here into Kansas, where then it turns over to all shades of pink and purple and etc. for more significant accumulations. And this pink down here is just for the severe thunderstorm watch, which goes to Dallas for this evening. All right, let me think what else we got. So satellite viewpoint. Let's take a look at this. So your biggest takeaway here with this one is the southern end. There's a capping layer in the atmosphere preventing storms from forming in this region. There's not enough convergence at the surface to overcome it. So you're not really getting any storm developed south of Red River. That's why you guys up there in North Texas are quiet. Now, earlier data had it eventually back building in there, but it wasn't until 10 o'clock. So we'll see if that happens. That's probably with the enhancement of the low-level jet. And we'll see if that does anything. But let's see what we got here. I'm going to look at some other things here real quickly. Let's see. Let's go to Fort Smith first. This will tell me how the environment looks in that area. So the hodograph has a nice little curve to it. And the profile is a standard profile for supercell storms with potential tornadic conditions. Let's see, down in Dallas, let's see how they look. This thing is slow. All right, so Dallas, let's see. What's going on with that thing? That's a bunch of nonsense. All right. Let's go to Shreveport. All right, so the photographs down there in North Texas, Northeast Texas are still pretty decent for tornadic storms. You just don't have anything to get them going. Let's see what we got here. Surface winds down here are fairly light. That's one of the issues. That's a limiting factor. Let me see where we have our best tornado based off helicity values or energy index, and it's far southeast Oklahoma and North Texas based off of that deal. Let's see what else we got. This one favors a little bit of North Texas, otherwise still kind of southern Arkansas. Let's see. Let's go using just the shear itself, and it favors south central Oklahoma. Where that tail end of that storm, kind of was that Cole County? A little bit better opportunity there, which extends down here into North Texas and Dallas-Fort Worth through Tyler, Texas, southeastern Oklahoma. So this little composite indice kind of favors that area for tornadic activity. Let me see here. What else? Yeah, so a lot of these little things that we can look at for best environmental conditions seems to be down here. So if I were to look at the environmental here, boy, that does not work at all. Where is... Something's off. This is not measuring data at all. It says 0, 0, 0, 0. Something's off with this thing. All right, well, we won't use it then. It's fine. I got other things I can use. Oh, I wanted to look at a sounding from... Let's go back here. Do we have Dallas? Man, where's all my data tonight? Let's go back to 2. Let's try this one. There we go. Okay, so that explains why you guys in North Texas aren't getting anything. See this right here? That's your capping layer. So the models had hinted at this, which is why you're kind of on the southern fringe of the potential action today, is because this capping layer was going to prevent any storms from firing in your area. So that means you stay quiet. But that layer erodes the more northward you go. So let's go take a look at what that looked like. Let's do this. All right, so here's Norman when they launched the sounding this evening. Of course, the front had already come through, so earlier in the day, the warm front never quite got to Norman. So here there's some mid-level instability, but not any low level. That's not going to tell us much. Here's Dallas. So here's Dallas at 6 o'clock, not an hour ago, but 6 o'clock this evening when they launched the balloon. Good shear profile, pretty decent hodograph. hail markers up around 1 inch to 2 inches in diameter. Not quite the big ones. And then a little bit of a tornado threat also. But they had a cap right here. So it's where this red line goes up, the green line goes up, and they have to meet and then go up higher. But there's this little warm nose that the kid can get overcome. And because of that, you get no storms. And it's not overly large at this particular time. I think in the newer data it was actually a little bit bigger. But at 6 o'clock it was doable, but temperatures have cooled down a little bit here from 76, and that makes the cap even stronger. So odds are, unless something changes tonight drastically, you're not going to get anything in Dallas-Fort Worth. It'll all be north of you, and more than likely kind of in the Red River domain. Let me see what else I want to see. Anything else? No. Okay, so let's go to some model data. Let's see what we got to work with here. So we'll go to the HRR, which again likes to overpromise and underdeliver. And before I look at that, let's go back to the latest on this storm, make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, so we got the 2 storms still. Nothing's changed. This northern one, I think again the front's hosing what was going to be a chance for it to ramp up with the way the structure looked like in the data. So we'll end up probably having to focus on this tail end guy. And it's got a really nasty hail core with it, 2.5 inches in diameter. My goodness, that is a big hailstone. Let me go see what this looks like. And then I'll get back to the model data for tonight. Let's see. All right, so it's got a good hail core up to about 30,000 feet. And let's see, where's my deal here? I'm at 60 dBz. Let's see if we got anything more than that. Nope, down to about 65 dBz. Oh yeah, so that's definitely 2-inch size hail. Being lofted, and then some of that of course will come down, and the rest of it will kind of hang up there in the sky. So this is falling around the county line of Hughes and Cole. So it's splitting each county in the middle, and that runs right along North-South 376 Road, bounded by East Road West 155th, and North-South 378. Those are your north-south roads where this thing kind of runs along on the county line. And then on the south end is just a bunch of rivers and some tiny roads here, like North Road 377. The main highway here is 75, running north and south, and it's just west of there. That's where the biggest hail core is. This guy down here east of Luna, a little bit of hail with it, Lewis Cemetery Road and North Road 3750. Let's see if the velocity has changed. Yeah, it looks like it is not. Still very disorganized. Let me see if there's anything upstairs. Nope. All right. So this has got a long ways to go to do anything more than just being a scary looking storm. Okay. All right, so we're waiting to see if anything happens with that. You guys, again, around McAllister, Crowder, Kiowa, just kind of keep in mind these storms will be working their way toward your area. So at a minimum, heavy rainfall, lightning, likely a little bit of hail with that, and then we'll see if anything happens in the tornado department. The northern storm, the probability of a tornado is 38%. The southern one is only 22%, so pretty low right now. Doesn't mean much. They were higher much earlier, and they didn't do anything then either. Okay, so let's go to the model data. So let's see here. It's got a cluster of storms, kind of like it looks now here at 9 o'clock, so it did fairly well. Here's 10 o'clock. Oh, what happened? Really weakened and continues to weaken. And it dies out. that's not much of a threat. My guess is the cap was a little stronger than what models thought, which is usually the case. And being nighttime, unless the storm is rooted like a nice little supercell, it will be the outlier to the rule. In other words, the rest of the storms will die off, and it will survive for at least a little while. So we'll see what happens with that scenario. But let's just go here 11 o'clock for McAllister and see what happens. The environment is still conducive, though, for a tornado, and it's still conducive for large hail. The problem is, again, the cap is increased quite substantially. So same thing I've stated before, which is unless the storm is already ongoing, it doesn't have a chance to tap into this potential. If it does, then it does have a chance to tap in, which is why you can get a tornado in this environment. But right now, that's what the latest data there shows. Let me see about updraft helicity. So right through the McAllister area for this storm now. So that southern storm, the model likes to hold it, to keep it together through, let's see, what time is this? 10 to 11 o'clock. And then after 11, it fizzles out. Looks like there's some new stuff it tries to get going back around. Looks like 1 o'clock in the morning up here north of Fort Smith. Probably along that boundary. That's probably be cold front induced, so we'll see. But let me go with the shear and Cape values. So there is that surge. Okay, so again, this was one of the weaknesses today. We just didn't have all that deep level moisture. It's stuck down here in Texas. So we're going to go through time here. Watch this little area here in southeast Oklahoma where we've got, here's 11 o'clock around McAllister. You've got 53 joules per kilogram. Really decent shear, but very low instability. You can still get a tornado in that environment. It's harder to do so. So watch what happens in this far corner of the state as we go into 11 and midnight. You see how these yellows come in here? Just off the page you're probably seeing. That's around 2,000 joules per kilogram. So that's a lot of moisture. That's a lot of juice. That's a lot of instability that sneaks in here. So if I click on a forecast sounding from that, it cranks up the hail sizes up to 4 inches in diameter as a result. Of course, it keeps the tornado potential going, and a significant tornado with that. And it doesn't have really much of a cap. I mean, just barely. So this is one of those very conditional environments. Now, had all this deeper, richer moisture work its way into the area that we're talking about now, our outcome would be completely different, just so you know. And I looked at the data, was it on Monday with when I did that forecast discussion from the hotel. I told you it gets too excited about the deep moisture. It won't make it. And as a result, it won't be as ominous as what it's appearing. So that's a flaw in the model. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. So it's a flaw in the model. The deeper moisture did not make it. But again, if it had, my goodness, it'd be a completely different outcome. But needless to say, that's all going to be the east of Oklahoma for the remainder of tonight, northeast Texas, southwestern Arkansas, that kind of deal. So you will still have to watch for any storms in those areas tonight. So there still is a threat for severe weather and a potential for damaging weather. Let me back this out. We'll do a bigger picture. All right, so go through time here. We'll go to like the midnight hour. So you can see how it's at this point. Let's go right here. Southern third of Arkansas, the tip of Oklahoma, Tyler area, northeastern Texas. This is kind of like the favored zone right here for any storms that were to enter that environment. Could become tornadic, at least up to about midnight to 1 in the morning. Once we get past that, the shear becomes more linear. Like this spot here, southwest of Little Rock, for example, it's all kind of westerly, southwesterly. Now what that happens is the hazard type is still going to indicate tornado, but in reality, without a lot of low-level turning at the lowest, say 1 kilometer in the atmosphere, it gets very hard to produce a tornado in that environment. So it's not as ideal. There's going to be some big storms, and yeah, it gets some big hail. And there still might be one rogue thing, but it gets very hard to do so at that point. You've lost one of your main ingredients of producing a tornado. So anyway, so that'll be something to kind of pay attention to overnight in that area. Let me look at another run here, the NAM. Let's see what it does. Same idea, not nearly as bullish on the amount of moisture and instability. But again, through midnight, 1 and 2 o'clock in the morning, starts to wane. But definitely something to kind of keep your eye on. Let's go take a look at the output on the storms. So the NAM, you know what? It didn't do too bad. It didn't do too bad with a little bit of these little helicity tracks about where they are currently. All right, but what it does is interesting is this right here, this line of very thin line of rain is along a frontal boundary that is going through a very strong cap. In other words, a lid in the atmosphere, inversion layer. So this is indicative of that signal. Anytime you see this signal in the model data, it means a very thin line of rain along the front, meaning the front's going to force it to rain one way or the other, but it's just not going to be a big bunch of severe weather with it. Anyway, so it will technically rain in Dallas. It just won't be anything significant. Okay, but even this model struggles past midnight to produce anything in this region that's favorable. So it's the same thing. It's very conditional. It's a freak, isolated type event. You're going to have a couple of storms that stay rooted that move into this area because there won't be any new surface-based storms that will form in this region. They'll have to move in from about where they are currently in southern Oklahoma and then get that direction. So let's take a look and see. So that would be like these guys down here. Okay, so let's see how our storms are doing. If anything's changed. So Ashland, you're in the path of this potentially tornadic storm. So you are under the new tornado warning that came out. This thing was just issued. So 9:43, tornado warning for southwestern Pittsburgh County, and that goes until 10:30. Storm capable of producing a tornado located 8 miles southeast of Gertie, moving east at 40. Tornado and ping pong ball size hail. And we have Kiowa, Savannah, Haywood, Blanco, Ashland, and Pittsburgh in the path. And 1.5 inch hail with that. And honestly, the algorithm's up around 2.5 inch size hail. So the wording only says 1.5 inches, but the algorithms are saying it's much bigger. Okay, this northern one around Scipio is really falling apart. They dropped the tornado warning with it. Actually, I think it expired. It never got its act together. Let me go back in time. Yeah, nothing ever came of that one, which is totally okay with me. All right, so in other words, that's just becoming still residual hail maker for a little bit longer and still got some lightning and heavy rain with it. So if you guys in Scipio and Crowder and Indianola, you can breathe and come out of your tornado shelters if you like, your warning has been expired. So that just leaves with these guys down here, south, southeast of Gertie. Again, hail size up around 2.5 inches in diameter. Probability of a tornado is about 68% according to these algorithms. So that's come up since what earlier was 37. So that's a big jump to go from that to that. But the trick here is, let me show you a little key here. This bottom end of the storm is lined up in this fashion, right? So unfortunately, if you have a storm lined up in this fashion or in this fashion, neither one of those are conducive for any immediate tornado threat. However, once it kind of goes into this fashion with a little curl signature, that is when you got to pay attention for potential for an immediate tornado threat. So in other words, it's going to have a little while to go to get there. And that could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It could be never. But it's in an environment that's conducive, so we'll have to see what the storm can do. Like I said, it's on the county line here, splitting between Cole and Hughes. So still riding that county line with a big, heavy hail core axis. Just west about Ashland of 1, 2, 3, 4 miles to your west. So it's a very linear appearance. Now, there's another thing that we'll mention here, and this is unfortunately no man's land when it comes to a radar warning meteorologist. So let me back this out a little bit more. All right, so what we have here is a radar system here, a radar system here, a radar system here, and a radar system down here. Okay? We do not have a radar system anywhere in here. All right? Which means any of these storms, once they get into this little outline circle that I painted you, is problematic when it comes to warning for tornadoes. So a couple things will happen as a result. The Weather Service then will, to do the old CYA, which you know what that stands for, is just keep a tornado warning going. Even though they can't see one on radar, they don't know. They look at the storm, is it healthy? Does it still have a supercell structure with it? There are wind speeds we can analyze in the mid-levels of the storm and then infer different things down below, but it'll only get you so far. So they will issue the tornado warning as a precautionary measure because they can't see what's going on below 10,000 feet elevation. If you really want to track the actual tornado part of the storm, you got to have that radar beam right around 5,000 feet or less. Less preferably, but up to about 5,000 feet in ideal situations where it's a really strong storm and a really strong tornado. So anything above that and your accuracy goes away because you can't see, you're blind. So what they'll do is that's how they'll treat that. Now, there is a flip side of that, which is sometimes you get storms that move in that environment. They have not had a history of producing tornadoes, and they're new, and they can't even see the storm to begin with. They can see it's a supercell, but now they're kind of waiting for confirmation because it's probably maybe still in the daytime, late day, late afternoon, early evening. You still got people out spotting things, and they're probably reporting wall clouds and sky, that kind of deal. And they don't issue a warning, and maybe it starts to get dark, and all of a sudden one happens really fast, and there was no warning. So again, that's the flip side, which is if you don't be proactive and you don't be progressive, you end up reactionary, and you're like, oh no, and then I got to issue the warning too late, right? So that's the no man's land here of southeast Oklahoma, which is unfortunate. Now, I can tell you there is some good news. There is a new radar that's been developed. It's being built last year, and it's supposed to be going online this year. I don't know what the holdup is. Should be online any minute, but that will help to fill in some of this gap. It's a shared partnership with the Weather Service, the Native American community, I believe, and I can't remember who else was involved, but emergency management. So it's going to be kind of a conglomerate of agencies coming together to kind of help fill that void. So fingers crossed all that goes well, and we can get some better radar coverage down here. So that means the warnings that come out here be much more accurate with less of a issue when it comes to false alarms. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. Let's see what we got here. Okay, so again, the heavy rain around Scipio, a little bit of hail, about an inch in diameter, and then down south of you guys towards Stewart, between you and Ashland is a secondary batch of some big hail, up around 2+ inches in diameter, up to tennis ball size in the algorithms. That's some big hail out there. Big hail is running right along north-south road 387 and also 388, crossroad of East Road 151, 150, and there's another one, 153, northwest of Ashland by a mile to 1 to 4 miles north-northwest. All right, so that's that one. Then we got this other one down here, Dotery, Mill Creek. So this is new. This is the area I told you we have to watch for if any storm has the potential to produce a tornado in the overnight period and get, stay out of that elevated terrain where it's just going to gradually weaken. It would have to be the most southern storm and away from the cold front. So in this particular case, it's kind of right on the line for right now. It's got a linear look to it. Let's see here. It does have a little bit of velocity convergence right here. So we'll see if on the leading edge, if something can mature and develop. in that region. So right now it's a severe thunderstorm warning for this one. That goes until, let's see, 10:30. Now, I will say this. There's another way the Weather Service can CYA, and that is when you're in an environment like this and you issue a severe thunderstorm warning. Because sometimes people will say, well, there was no tornado warning. In the severe thunderstorm warning, it will say this: remain alert for a possible tornado. Tornadoes can develop quickly from severe thunderstorms, and that is a legitimate point. Now, the goal, of course, is to separate the two and differentiate them for a reason. People take a tornado warning much more serious than they will a severe thunderstorm warning. But in a situation like this, that type of wording will be thrown in there because it can happen. There's a lot of other situations, though, where there's no chance ever producing a tornado, and it's just a severe thunderstorm. You're not going to see that wording in that. So it's just one of those options they use, to try to express more, seriousness of the situation, that don't just discount it, right? And that things can happen pretty fast. So it's just one of those CYA things. All right, but once either one's been spotted, or a wall cloud's been spotted, or the radar confirmation was very strong, then they'll just go ahead and go tornado, and they'll probably leave it there until it gets to a point to where either they can't just verify or validate that warning going on forever because the storm just doesn't look as good on radar, or other reasons. Okay, so this one here, it's got a long ways to go. It's not going to do anything in the immediate. Looking at the velocity data, it's all linear, nothing to it. All right, well, we're going to have to sit there and wait and babysit that one. All right, so those are the only two storms, really, of any significance. There is a severe thunderstorm warning up here for you guys in northeast Oklahoma, east of Tulsa. Why is this? Probably because there's a little bit of a wind deal here. It looks like broken power line. 3-inch tree limbs broken. That's impressive. Power poles broken. So let's do this. I'm going to start up another radar, and we're going to go to Tulsa, and we're going to see what the winds out of this particular storm look like. So hold that thought. All right, when it went through, interesting. It really wasn't all that crazy or impressive. Matter of fact, the wind you see here was just when this cord just went up right there. It was brand new. So let's see what the velocity data looked like. Just a wall of wind that went right over them. Wow, that's a big little wind gust that moved through in this tiny little area. See how that tracked up northeast? This little spot here. That's a 75 mile per hour wind. That's impressive. Let's see. Some of these oranges in here are at 89 miles per hour. That's a North Road 520 and East Road 640. So that was what's funny is we focus on the tornado threat, and a tornado threat obviously is just very strong winds. And sometimes by doing that, you lose track of just a standard thunderstorm wind in this particular case. And we had the algorithm showing up to around 80 miles per hour in the data. And this little spot right here, which is about a 2-mile wide swath, did exactly that. So the warning came out after the report came in of some damaging wind. Again, not a tornado situation, but a damaging wind situation. So this is in northeast Oklahoma, around Scrapper, north of Tahlequah, coming up toward Kansas and Oaks. So you guys are going to have some very strong winds up around 80 miles per hour moving through. And this is at 2,500 feet. This is it, yeah. So you'll lose a little bit of this from friction effects as you get down closer to ground level. So this is a deal where that sometimes this stuff can sneak up on you. All right. So in other words, when this line here, this is looks like gust front driven from a cold front and getting down into the backside of the storm for a rear flank downdraft type deal. It looked like what happened basically is the core of storms went up on this boundary and then tapped into the winds behind it and shoved it down to the ground behind it as a downburst. So at this point in time it was going through, there was no warning. The radar had estimated winds, let's see, around 50 miles per hour. But from the report, that was 3-inch tree limbs broken and power poles broken. So 50 mile per hour winds isn't going to do that. So the radar didn't really see it well. Now, part of that is probably because the radar was, at this case, it was near the zero isotop, which is, in other words, if a storm is more parallel to the radar beam, it's not going to see data very good. It has to be more of a perpendicular angle to it. So the angle of wherever the radar is seeing the storm is important. So if it's not lined up perfectly, you're going to miss some things. So in this particular case, the radar didn't see the wind, right? So the report came in. The Weather Service is like, oh, that really happened? They go look at the data, and I only said 50, and they go, oh, it's near the zero isotop, right? And this is new, so it just started. It just happened. All of a sudden, bam, all right? So you've had no precursor. So now you're in reactionary mode. So you go in there, you're starting up your products. You've now gone through, let's see, from here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 iterations. So you're 10 minutes in now, and this thing is still cranking along. And it's moving better angle for the radar. So now it's getting up around 57 miles per hour. And so now you're like, okay, so we'll issue the warning at approximately 12 minutes after the initial report. Now the radar is lined up in this fashion, so almost perpendicular. Okay, you see the difference? And it's not on this little zero isotop, which is the zero velocity data line, where it's going to be blind in this zone. But here, it's more perpendicular, so boom, it's got a good value assessment, and now it's going to have values here are much higher. All right, so we'll go with time as it keeps on going, has a good measurement, and in this red zone, it's now up around 45 miles per hour. So it's not nearly as strong as it was, looks like earlier. Let's see, that's the storm relative. Let me just do the motion of the storm itself without taking account movement. The winds up around here are still around 70 in this orange area. So that's kind of how that works when you're looking at a radar data. So let me go all the way back. See, when it came in, it had just started. And the data down here was up around little pink areas. I actually tell you what, if I look at straight velocity data, not storm relative, the data was actually doing pretty good. It was there around 60 to 70 miles per hour. So it should have been detected. Yeah, even down here, even though it wasn't the best radar coverage, that was 60. Yeah, so, oops. I missed that one. That's all right. So that's going to cause some straight line winds up in that area of the state. Okay, so let's go back down to our tornadic threat, and let's see what's happened down here. All right, for Ashland, you guys still dealing with the little hailstorm northeast of town. And let's see what we got here. We're going to get a little bit more on the noisy velocity data side, whereas some of this won't either be real or believable. And we're up around 7,000 feet. So you can have some weird stuff that goes on, side lobe issues and some other things that happen in radar data. So I'll have to look at another scan to see if that turns into anything. And the sky down here in the south, it's not doing much either. Let's see. That may have been a transient, like a QLCS tornado that went through northeast of Mill Creek right here for just one scan. It's possible. It didn't last but more than a minute, though. And it weakened, it's gone. So we'll see if anything kind of comes out of this one. It's just a severe thunderstorm warning on it, though. That's the one that had the wording that said a tornado could quickly happen. So we'll see what happens with that. That might be more of a QLCS type event that continues with that storm. So let's see. Yeah, Weather Service actually just mentioned the same thing. All right. So they'll put a little more spotlight on that one now because of that little artifact in the data. All right, so this one, let's see. Yeah, I think that was just an artifact in this data here as well. But it's coming into an area in the front part of the storm with a lot of hail. In the forward flank, which I've only seen a tornado once in the forward flank of the storm. And when I saw it, I didn't believe it because it's not supposed to happen. It's not supposed to be possible. So even though the data was there, I was like, well, shoot. Textbook says that's not supposed to occur, but I'm seeing it happen in reality. So what do I do with this, right? So I was like, well, I got to tell you there's a tornado there and go with it. And sure enough, and that was in southern Oklahoma. That was, gosh, I don't know, like 5 years ago or something, 6 years. I lose track. And there was actually, I think, 2 in that storm that happened that way. And it did do damage. And I was like, son of a gun. But anyway, that's pretty rare for that to happen just based off of storm dynamics and a lot what happens with the air temperatures in here and the wind direction and all this other kind of stuff. It's a fluke thing of, when you think you got it all figured out, something else surprises you. One of those deals. All right, let's see back down here. Starting to get a little bit more of an S shape. You see that? A little bit more of an inflow notch. So we'll have to, again, watch for little spin-ups. This little notch right here. See that? That's probably legitimate. And that's kind of, I think, in the same residual spot I had for that other one. Let me back it here. Yeah, see that one right there? The blue and the red, how they kind of came together. They disappear. And then that same general vicinity, here's another one. Let's see, where are we at? 5,500 feet, though. So it's going to be difficult to really know for sure. But we'll see what happens. Needless to say, that severe thunderstorm warning will remain in that area. Okay, let's see. Back up here. This guy. All right, nothing there. All right, let's give those two a break here. Let's go just check out what's happening in that northeast Oklahoma one. So strong wind here in the orange, up around 80. Let me switch radar sources, and let's do this one. Oh, that's some bad radar data. And right here, this pink area is legit. So that spot right there is 70 to 80 miles per hour going through east of Kansas, east of Highway 10. So it's just this one tiny little spot, man. It's like about 2 miles in length, in radial length of just going to town when it comes to wind. That's impressive. I'm going to hit the play button here. So it's going to load up the data. So we'll track that little pink area as it moved from south of Oaks and then kind of curling up along 10. Here we go. Right through there. So it just kind of missed Oaks for the most part. Kind of barely clipped you. And then coming up on 412. Now the colors are transferring over because the radar's having a tough time deciding how to uncorrupt this data. But it's in that little spot here on 412 is getting the nasty winds on there and Highway 10, little intersection. So heading right up toward Colcord. So a little damaging wind pocket for there. Okay, let's go back down here. Oh, didn't mean to do that. Yeah, I did. Okay, good. Still a hailmaker, but the hail's come down in size to 1.3 inches, so no longer the huge markers that the algorithms had shown. Let's see, what does this hail guy say? Oh, 1 inch quarter size reported northwest of Ashland. So this thing is linear junk with the exceptions of two little weak circulation areas. This guy up here and this guy up here. And I don't foresee them becoming problematic for the time being. All right. So when I did the live at noon today, I kind of mentioned the fact that my best area based off the data from the stuff that came out this morning was from basically McAllister, draw line, south-southwest to kind of the north side of Dallas-Fort Worth. So this would be the favored area, and that would run east along to Tyler, up toward Texarkana, and then it would kind of cover southern Arkansas. And then this northern fringe would go up to Fort Smith, and then probably east to near Little Rock, and then southeast. So that was kind of my favorite zone in here for potential tornadoes, just because that's where the best instability would be during the overnight period. And looks like that's still going to hold if you look at that data. However, even though this is the region, you still have to have a surface-based storm. And for right now, we have this storm here that'll be surface-based. That'll ride kind of in this vicinity, in this flow. And then you're going to have this one here. That'll be surface-based. And that'll ride in this area. So these are your two storms that will have potentially be tornadic overnight tonight. This stuff up here will move northeast and then slowly die out. Although there may be some brief damaging winds with them and some small hail, but other than that, once they get to north of I-40, they kind of run out of the juice as they head in that area. And then again, I don't see anything happening along the Red River because we just don't have any storms that have developed any further south. Let me go look at, let's see, data. Where was it? This guy here. All right, so in other words, this is the tail end on the infrared satellite view. And back from there, we don't see any new cold tops that have come up. You still see this little white trail, and that's where you're having the cold front will affect and try to trigger off that really thin line. But we haven't had any new good solid storms develop, just given the environment itself. As far as where the strongest storms are, just based off of cloud tops, they're kind of scattered. We have the dark red, so that's up here. We've got the damaging winds. Secondary spot up here, we've got a little bit of that hail and that residual tornadic storm. And then you got this guy down here that we're watching right here with the cold top, and then we'll have a new one back here. So these tops up here will gradually warm, meaning that these darker reds will eventually go to more of this, the bright red, and they'll weaken with time. And then these guys down here should stay pretty dark red as they move into this area of southeast Oklahoma. Let me look. What am I thinking? You already looked at data for the forecast. Tomorrow, by the way, is going to be cold. If you don't know, let me show you what that looks like. Because depending on where you live today, you got this. You either got the 60s to near 70, or you got 50s along the I-44 corridor, or you got the 20s out in the Panhandle. So if you go through time into tomorrow morning, we're all into the 20s, central, northern, western Oklahoma. And then during the day, we're going to rebound a little bit for you, but we're still going to be cold. Look at all these 30s here across the state of Oklahoma. Even chilly down here in Dallas, they're 46. So quite a bit colder tomorrow than it was today. And then it'll be cold with a lot of 20s at night for Friday morning, teens in the Panhandle. And then as we head into the afternoon, we're going to add about 10 degrees. So we'll be up in the upper 40s to right around 50 across the state. So another cool day, but not as bad. And then another cold morning in the 20s and 30s for Saturday. But then the weekend looks really good after that. All right, so let's go back to our data here. All right, so the strong damaging winds from this storm. Get off of there. That's what I wanted. Has diminished quite a bit. They're up around, in the pink area, is up around 60 to 65. It's at 3,500 feet, so they'll be lighter than at the surface. So you have to subtract, as a rule of thumb, you can do a 10% reduction. So you could go, 58, 60 miles per hour for the surface reflection of this. But the really bad stuff was up around 80 plus. That's over with. That's good. All right, let me go back down to our other guys. All right, so there's McAllister and Savannah. Let's see here. The big hail cores that were out here earlier have all since diminished, so it means they've dropped its load. It's not being held aloft anymore. And that usually means that the storm is weakened. The updrafts have weakened to a point where they can't sustain that kind of hail size. So it's a good sign. That means these things are kind of on a weakening cycle. All right, let's go with this guy down here. And again, if nothing's going to happen with this, I'm probably going to let this go. Yeah, it's still going to take more time for any of these to actually do something. So. All right, I have babysat these things long enough. They have done nothing when it comes to tornadoes in a long, long time, since really I-35 corridor. That's where we had our best brief potential. So there were some wall clouds noted. There was a funnel at one point noted. We had some hail off and on, of course, heavy rain and lightning. And honestly, the biggest damage didn't even occur anywhere near these guys. It occurred in northeast Oklahoma on this one storm that just went nuts southeast of Tulsa, and as it moved northeast toward Siloam Springs, and it had a little pocket of 80-mile-per-hour winds with it, and that was probably the most destructive when it comes to wind. The ones down south always had some hail. There was up around 2 to 2.5 inches in diameter, so that's pretty destructive. But that's it. So they're just our standard severe weather orders of magnitude around here. We can get severe weather any time of the year. This is mainly focused between mid-March to mid-June as far as the big hurrahs. This one, came in a little early. It's only February 15th. So if it came in a month later, we'd have a lot more moisture to work with usually, and you get a lot more of a serious situation unfold. So we can be thankful that not everything was there ingredients-wise to kind of help, bolster a more significant outcome. All right, so that's it for me. I'm going to kind of hang back and watch for a little while. If it looks like a tornado will develop, I'll get back on and broadcast about it. But other than that, you guys in there in southeast Oklahoma expect some rough thunderstorms to move through over the next few hours. till at least the 1 o'clock in the morning time frame, and some of those will have a little bit of hail, a little bit of wind, and potential for a tornado. That's about it. The rest of us will be quieting down. All right, well, thanks guys for watching. Again, as always, please tell your friends and family about AT's weather, and thanks for your support, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.